A lot of my clients have been asking for that DJO sound. So to strengthen my palette, I recreated the end of beginning from scratch. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how I did it. Also, there are free presets, sessions, and stems in the description below. Hi, my name is Seth. I produce music under the name Velvet Year. I'm a Nashville indie pop producer, and if you are local to Nashville and would like to get coffee sometime, or if you're not in Nashville and you just want to work on a project remotely, my DMs are open. Okay, we're gonna look at the drums first. Here's what the kit sounds like soloed. I remade this kit in Superior Drummer just because that's what I had. I would say one of the main characteristics about this drum kit that makes it special to me in this production is that it's live, and there's a little bit of you get what you get when it comes to sampled kits, but there are a few things that I did that made it feel a little bit closer to a live kit. The main thing would be how I programmed in the MIDI. So first of all, for all of our hi-hats and for all of our kicks and stuff like that, I played that by hand on my MIDI controller here. But if I zoom in on all of this MIDI, you can see it's not perfectly quantized, especially on the hi-hat. You can see it's like sliding off the grid a little bit. I think a large proponent of what makes this track sound so good is this sort of like boom, cat, boom, cat vibe that it has. And on some level, a lot of that vibe is going to come from things being played tastefully sloppy. So for this production, I intentionally didn't quantize everything as much as I normally would. I think it's really helpful to do things like percentage quantizing, where you can select all of your MIDI data and decide by the amount you want to quantize it. So get a good performance in that's mostly there, and then maybe tighten it up like 30% just to, you know, actually edit it a little bit, but don't actually like quantize it to the bar, because the little moments where the snare and the hi-hat flam with each other, but like inconsistently hit to hit, that kind of like adds like a cool flavor to the track. In terms of kick drums, one of the things that I noticed in the original was that there was a lot more out mic than there was in mic. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's talking about the microphones and their position inside of the kick drum. A kick in mic is going to be on the other side of the head. Normally it's looking through like a little porthole that they cut in the front, and it's like looking into the kick drum. Whereas an out microphone is going to be like physically on the outside of the drum kit, sort of like pointing at the head. And normally what it breaks down to is this mic, the kick in, is where you get a lot of the click from the beater, and the out mic is where you can get a lot of like the throaty rumble and a lot of the mid-range. And so if you're trying to make this sound with a multi-sampled kit, I think that it would be better for you to be more heavy on the kick out mic, or just pick drum samples that are a little bit more throatier and are less like clicky. Also with our snare, I am raising the snare bottom mic a lot more than I normally would, just because that's where you get the sort of like of air from like the snare wires on the bottom of the snare. Again, everything I'm talking about right here is a lot easier to do when you're just recording a live kit and you can just loosen the wires a little bit or tighten them up a little bit more. At the end of the day, if this drum kit is like the sound that you're going for, I might look into, you know, hiring a live drummer, or you can just download the preset. I would say most of the song is, and I would say a majority of the song is that basic, you know, backbeat. So I would also watch to make sure that your hi-hats aren't too harsh, because digging in even just a little bit too hard in that hi-hat, it brings out all of these like harsh ringy frequencies that are not pleasant. Next, we can look at our synths. All of these are Junos, by the way. So the first one we have is this. It's this very glassy 80s polyphonic keys sound. The things that I think are distinct about this synth sound specifically are, one, that the filter is really open. It's not that. It's really bright. It's got like this piercing quality to it, which makes it pop out in the arrangement a lot, because it's really the only thing up in that high range. I also think that this release being up really high is important, because it makes all the notes kind of cascade into each other. So if I lower this down, back to where it was, you get this sort of like weird, like ringing arpeggio thing going. I would also say it's important to have like some delay and reverb on them. If I take the delay and reverb off, It still gets the sound there, but I feel like adding some delay and reverb kind of adds a little bit of spaciness to it, and it accentuates that thing that the release is doing. So it makes it sound even more sort of swimmy and washy. I would say that even though it feels like this is the only synth lead in the song, which it very well could be, when I kept listening to the original over and over again, I almost felt like there was some other beefy layer underneath it. So I added this guy. Very quiet, very subtle, but them together. It just gives it a little bit more meat on it, I guess. I don't know. It's just when I played that one solo synth in the chorus, it didn't feel like it had the same meat or weight that the original song does in that section, even though it does kind of sound like it's just playing that same melody over and over again. I also feel like there's some chords being played in the chorus. To me, it just sounds like there's a little bit of meat and oomph that kicks in, specifically when all the layers are jumping in on the chorus, but it feels very subtle, and I don't think it's like another guitar layer. I think that like the synths are kind of like fading in almost like a little bit of a ghost synth, like a little bit of a mid-range booster, just to make it feel bigger in the song. Next, we will look at our guitars, which honestly, there's not that many. We have this one double-tracked part here. This guitar part is very interesting to me because it's very low gain. So this is, I didn't even bother adding this to the presets. Like, it's just a standard clean guitar sound, I guess. But there's not a lot of low end in it. And normally when you're trying to play like a low chuggy part like that, it's like you're trying to get like this low end out of it or this mid range out of it. But the song is actually pretty tame in that regard. It's not trying to take up all the space in the world. And so the chugs actually tend to be like a little tamer. They're played on this very, very low gain amp sound, and a lot of the chunk kind of comes from the grit that's happening in the rest of the track and the fact that these are double tracked. If they weren't double tracked, it just doesn't stand out as much. Also, you can hear on this guy, also you can hear on these guys, we have a little bit of a plate reverb going on everything, just because I feel like it helps glue that live band vibe a little bit, even though I would say for the most part, this isn't a really reverby track. It's pretty dry for the most part. That is, except for this guy here, which has got a lot of reverb on it. And it's this weird, like, whiny, pitch bendy thing that's just, it happens in the chorus. And for some reason, a lot of the magic, I feel, of this chorus can be brought down to the vocal layers that they recorded and the harmonies. And then, like, that guitar part, like, it's the only real high gain part of the entire song. I used Corey Wong Neural DSP to get this sound. This is honestly just a preset that I made for my guitar pack with a little bit of reverb and delay boost, but everything other than that is basically the same. If you want to get guitar tones like this, I made a preset pack on my Gumroad. It's $13, and it's $13, and you get just a bunch of like indie pop style guitar tones, and there's some bass tones in there. Go check it out. But yeah, we're really driving this part, really having the reverb and the delay add this sort of wash where they're kind of like feeding into each other a little bit. If I take off the reverb and delay, it almost has like a Hans Zimmer Joker theme vibe to it, but when you throw a delay on it, it adds a little bit of that stereo width, and it kind of feeds into itself a little bit more so that when it goes into the reverb, and just to give you a little bit of perspective, if I play the chorus without this guy, it feels like nothing almost, but then just a little bit of, I don't know, just high-end whine. It's almost like the rest of the track is minimalist so that one part can just be like crazy on its own when you like turn it down a little bit in the mix. The last group we have to look at are the basses. So in my opinion, there's two basses happening. There's a live bass and a synth bass layered underneath it. So this looks stereo right now, but this is just an edited DI of my P bass, and it sounds like this. This was a pretty simple bass tone. My buddy Johnny showed me this SansAmp plugin from Canvas Audio, and the bass scooped SVT preset was just the right amount of grit that I had. I will say I found that on my P bass, I hit this weird spot where when I was using a pick, it felt right in terms of what I was playing, but it just texturally didn't work. And so one thing that I tried that actually made it a lot better is these guys. This is a felt pick. I believe they're for like ukuleles, but I bought a pack of them when I landed here in Nashville, and it is a great way to get a bass with like brand new strings to have that almost aged strings sound while you're still plucking it. Here, I'll actually show this right now because I think it's really cool. Okay, so this is the P bass that I recorded it with. So here's what it sounds like with my pick. A little bit too bright and too modern sounding, especially with like newer strings. So I'm gonna use my fingers. Still a little bit too bright. This whole same preset with this felt pick. It just makes it so pillowy, and I was actually surprised when I tried this how well it worked, because it just makes everything bloom a little bit, which is really hard to do on like brand new strings. So if you want to grab a pair of these, they're not that cheap. You can probably order them from Amazon. But yeah, this bass is just kind of chugging along, sort of a gritty open tone with a really soft delivery. And then underneath it, we have this guy. I just felt like there was a little bit of like a synthy warble underneath the main bass, because I could hear this like picking happening, and I recognized that as like a live bass, but then like underneath it there was almost like this like weird wobbly layer underneath it. So these two played together. And the only other thing that I would point out is the two-bus. The main things that I would look at from this is throwing some kind of like preamp plugin at the beginning, getting everything jumping into a preamp where you're kind of almost lightly touching the input just to get the whole track a little bit punchier. I feel like is really helpful for producing indie pop tracks like this, because it makes the mid-range come alive a little bit more. And you can also see I boosted a little bit of that like 1.6K. It just makes the mid-range liven up a little bit more. Another thing that I think makes this track kind of hit a little bit harder is we're not doing a ton of processing on the drum kit itself, but we're using a clipper to sort of clip the drums on the master bus. I am slowly moving now towards a season of mixing where I'm very rarely putting things on my actual drum bus unless it's like a live kit, in which case you're gonna have to do a little bit of work. But I feel like I've almost gotten to a point where I like a drum kit kind of interacting with my master bus a lot. Like a drum kit where there's not a whole lot happening maybe on the actual drum kit itself, but it's like being clipped on the actual master bus. For me, I just keep liking that sound over and over again, and so it just comes together for me a lot. And all together, it sounds like this. So yeah, hopefully you guys find that helpful. Again, all the stems, this project file, and the presets for a lot of what I did here are in that Gumroad link. So knock yourselves out. And again, if you are an indie pop musician who's looking for a producer who makes music like this, hit me up in my DMs, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. See ya.